Is it possible to sum up the entirety of the Game of Thrones timeline in a single video? Sure, the lore is vast, but we think we've brewed up a perfectly concentrated version that'll blow your mind like wildfire.
You're funny.
Before the first men come to Westeros, it's inhabited by non-human creatures like the Children of the Forest. But in 12,000 BAC, those first men show up around Dorne and start overtaking the country. Note that BAC is the first form of time measurement we'll encounter in this timeline, and it stands for before Aegon's conquest. Obviously, we'll circle back to Aegon and his conquest before long. War breaks out between the children and first men, and they eventually sign a peace treaty and retreat to separate corners of the continent. Thus, the Age of Heroes begins. In Game of Thrones, we learn that the Night King is created by the children in this time period. This is also when Westeros experiences its first long night on record. And when we say first on record, we mean that the children may have lived through long nights but didn't keep track. This one was noted by the first men. Potentially spurred by the existence of the Night King, this long night is a seemingly endless winter that kicks off in 8,000 BAC and allows White Walkers to infiltrate Westeros and massacre the first men. The children and first men come together to beat back the White Walkers, the legend of Azor Ahai is born, and a man named Brandon Stark leads the charge against the White Walkers and wins. A wall is built to separate Westeros from the far north, and the people beyond the wall deem themselves free folk or wildlings. Around 6,000 BAC, the Andals, who hail from the free landmass known as Essos, cross the Narrow Sea and find their way to the Vale, attacking the Children of the Forest as they move further north. They ultimately end up wiping out the children and ending their line. During this same time frame, the Iron Islands are settled by a group of men who come up with the incredibly original name Ironborn. They are all about the sea, and we learn about them in Game of Thrones mostly through Theon Greyjoy's arc.
Bless him with salt. Bless him with stone. Bless him with steel.
The invasion of the Andals changes quite a bit about the overall landscape of Westeros, which includes the fall of Valyria. During the invasion, around 5000 BAC, the people of the Valyrian Peninsula find dragons and are able to tame them using magic. Though the Valyrians fight great battles with their dragons, they can't escape nature, and when a volcano range known as the 14 Fires erupts, the city is leveled and covered in ash. The area around Valyria, which includes the Free Cities, sees some infighting but eventually settles down. The Andals are now just regular guys in Westeros, and great houses start forming, including House Bolton, House Martell, and House Frey. House Targaryen, meanwhile, marks its territory in Dragonstone. This is also the time when the Rhoynar migrate from Essos and marry Andals and first men alike, creating a rich cultural tapestry in Westeros. We can now dispense with the BAC time classification and move to AC, which signifies after conquest. King Aegon I, known as Aegon the Conqueror, decides to put the free cities aside and invade Westeros, and he's got a secret weapon: 3 dragons that survived the doom of Valyria and are the only remaining dragons known in Westeros or beyond. Aegon absolutely decimates everything in his path, including a newly built Harrenhal, and the Tullys of Riverrun are one of the first major houses of Westeros to join Aegon's side. House Lannister begins this entire thing fighting Aegon, but as he battles their forces, Aegon graciously allows the Lannisters to continue their line. The king designates specific areas of Westeros for different great houses. Lannisters get the Westerlands, House Tyrell gets the Reach, and after Aegon's bastard half-brother, Orys Baratheon, kills a major enemy of Aegon's known as the Storm King, the Baratheons get the Stormlands. Basically, Aegon is so powerful that he's able to take over Westeros outright, which is why he's such a legendary figure for centuries afterwards. After giving Dorne permission to remain independent, Aegon is recognized as the true king of the 7 kingdoms in Old Town and builds King's Landing, which becomes the capital of all of Westeros. This kicks off one of the most significant dynasties in the history of Westeros. There are, to put it lightly, a lot of Targaryen rulers, and many of them share names. Aegon is a popular choice, which makes this entire enterprise pretty confusing at points. Aegon I dies, and his son Aenys, the product of a relationship between Aegon and one of his sisters, is born. You may notice that incest is also a common thing with the Targaryens as we continue. That guy only gets 5 years on the throne before he dies prematurely and is replaced by Maegor, Aenys' half-brother, who steals the throne from Aenys' children. An unpopular king, Maegor dies by suicide rather than face a revolt, and the throne passes to Aenys' son, Jaehaerys I. We're now at 103 AC. Jaehaerys had ruled for 55 years over a pretty peaceful situation, and King Viserys I Targaryen is named as his successor.
For he knew the cold truth, the only thing
that could tear down the House of the Dragon was itself.
Viserys is a kind and good-hearted ruler who narrowly wins the throne over his cousin, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, who becomes known as the Queen Who Never Was. Viserys has a problem, though. He only has one child, and it's a girl named Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. When his wife Aemma dies in childbirth with their son, and the baby also perishes, Viserys finally anoints Rhaenyra as his one true heir, but he also marries her childhood friend Alicent Hightower and has children with her, threatening Rhaenyra's claim to the throne, particularly because Alicent and Viserys' first child is a boy. Viserys I Targaryen dies of old age in 132 AC, and that's when the Targaryen civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons begins. In his dying moments, Viserys says a name, and oh boy, does that alter the entire course of Westeros history.
The prince.
Prince Aegon.
To unite the realm against the cold.
Though he's talking about a prophecy from Aegon the Conqueror that he already shared with Rhaenyra, Alicent thinks he's referring to their son, Aegon II Targaryen, and she fights to install him on the throne. This infighting is benign enough until Rhaenyra's second eldest son, Lucerys Velaryon, and his dragon are both killed by Alicent's second eldest son, Aemond Targaryen, and his much larger dragon during a fight in the skies. Rhaenyra vows revenge against her own kin, and the Dance of the Dragons sees multiple royal casualties. Rhaenys is killed by Aemond during the Battle of Rook's Rest, while Aegon II loses 2 children to assassins and then is grievously wounded during the same battle. If we fast forward through this conflict at a very fast pace, it all ends with Aegon II still suffering from his injuries, feeding his own aunt Rhaenyra to his dragon. After Aegon II dies of natural causes, Rhaenyra's son, Aegon III, is free to take the throne, but after this conflict, pretty much all the dragons in Westeros have been wiped out, or so everyone thinks. A bunch of Targaryens rule in the background as the Blackfyre Rebellion takes shape around 195 AC, and this includes Aegon IV, who earns the flattering nickname Aegon the Unworthy and is regarded as one of the worst kings in Westerosi history. This comes about when a man named Daemon Blackfyre, a bastard child fathered by Aegon IV, claims that the current king, his half-brother Daeron II Targaryen, isn't Aegon IV's son and can't rule. Daemon claims the Iron Throne for himself and marches towards King's Landing with a considerable army behind him, though he's met by Daeron's sons Baelor and Maekar, and the battle is hard-fought. Daeron is ultimately aided by Dornish forces, and after Daemon Blackfyre is slain during the extraordinarily bloody conflict known as the Battle of the Redgrass Field, Daeron ensures that Dorne will remain free. Shortly thereafter, Sir Duncan the Tall, a noble knight, runs afoul of some members of the Targaryen family, but forms a close friendship with yet another Prince Aegon Targaryen, the grandson of Daeron and son of Maekar, who becomes his squire. This interlude, which concerns the adventures of Dunk and Egg, is chronicled in the novellas Tales of Dunk and Egg. Eventually, more Targaryen kings rise and fall, and Aegon V Targaryen, the previously mentioned Egg, brings peace to Westeros. He's killed in a fire in 259 AC, and Aerys II Targaryen takes the throne a few years later. To say that the reign of Aerys II Targaryen is chaotic is an understatement. Along with his sister wife Rhaela Targaryen, Aerys has a whole bunch of children, but the important ones are Rhaegar Targaryen, Viserys Targaryen, and Daenerys Targaryen. During Aerys II's reign, though, an enterprising Lannister, Tywin, proves so ruthless against his enemies that Aerys names him Hand of the King. This decision will come back to haunt the king later. A problem presents itself when Rhaegar, despite his marriage to Elia Martell of Dorne, publicly expresses interest in Lyanna Stark of the North, sister of Lord Eddard Ned Stark. Put a pin in that, because first we're going to tackle the conflict known as Robert's Rebellion. Because of the murders of 2 Starks, Ned and his friend Robert Baratheon begin a rebellion that's eventually named for Robert himself, as he emerges as the next king of Westeros. Thanks to a series of political marriages, the Starks, Tullys, and Arryns band together behind Robert, and Aerys sends Viserys and Rhaela, who's pregnant with Daenerys, to Dragonstone for safety. Rhaegar is killed by Robert for stealing Robert's first love, Lyanna, and as the Lannisters sack King's Landing, Aerys tells the leader of his Kingsguard, Tywin's son Jaime, he intends to destroy the city. Jaime kills Aerys and becomes the Kingslayer, Robert marries Jaime's twin sister Cersei, and a new age is born. Let's quickly circle back to Rhaegar and Lyanna, because here's the thing. Even though Robert and his allies think Lyanna was kidnapped by Rhaegar, the truth is that the two were in love and secretly married. After their marriage, Lyanna gives birth to a son, Aemon Targaryen, but she dies after childbirth and begs her brother Ned, who discovers her in her birthing chamber in the Tower of Joy, to hide her son from Robert.
Promise me, Ned.
Ned raises the boy as his own bastard, much to the chagrin of his wife Catelyn. We eventually learn that this alleged bastard, Jon Snow, is technically next in line for the throne of Westeros as Rhaegar's legitimate heir, so this is a pretty important twist for the entire situation. Fast forward quite a bit to when Jon Arryn mysteriously dies late in Robert's reign, and Ned is called to serve in his stead as Robert's Hand of the King.
You helped me win the Iron Throne, now help me keep the damn thing. We were meant to rule together.
Ned, who schleps his daughters Arya and Sansa to King's Landing, is beheaded for his troubles, leaving his eldest son Robb to fight for his father after he's executed for treason by the Lannisters. His crime specifically is that he correctly points out that Cersei and Robert's children are definitely products of a relationship between Cersei and her own brother Jaime, and thus are illegitimate bastards. Elsewhere, Daenerys is married to a Dothraki warlord named Khal Drogo, and when he dies, she's reborn from his funeral pyre with 3 baby dragons, having brought eggs into the flames. This kicks off the War of the Five Kings in 298 AC, in which Starks, Baratheons, Lannisters, and Greyjoys all duke it out for control of the Seven Kingdoms, and in the case of the Starks and Greyjoys, independence for the North and Iron Islands. While Daenerys, still across the Narrow Sea, purchases armies and ships, including a massive and lethal force known as the Unsullied, trouble is brewing in Westeros. After Robb reneges on his engagement to a daughter of House Frey and marries a woman named Talisa for love instead, the Freys turn on the Starks and kill Robb, Catelyn, Talisa, and their forces during the Red Wedding. This leaves Sansa, now married to Tyrion Lannister, despondent, and she and her new husband are suspects when Cersei's son, the evil King Joffrey Baratheon, is poisoned at his wedding to Margaery Tyrell. The second youngest Stark, Bran, is up north learning to become the omniscient three-eyed Raven, and Arya is on the run, eventually making it to the free city of Braavos to become a faceless assassin.
Who are you?
No one.
Daenerys spends some time in slave cities like Meereen trying to eradicate said slavery, and Tyrion escapes King's Landing but not before killing his own father Tywin. Around this time, Jon Snow also has his first major battle with the Night King's full army after aligning himself with free folk beyond the Wall, and as they leave a hard-fought battle at the settlement of Hardhome, they watch as the Night King raises their dead with a flick of his hand, quadrupling his forces. After Jon Snow is killed by his own men at Castle Black in a mutiny and revived by a Red Priestess, he throws off his black robes and decides to find allies to try and stop the threat of the White Walkers coming from the north, but not before a wee bit of payback.
You shouldn't be alive. It's not right.
Neither was killing me.
At the same time, Daenerys, who was driven out of Meereen by rebels named Sons of the Harpy, is captured by Dothraki hordes. After setting fire to one of their camps and killing many of her captors, the survivors pledge allegiance to her and her 3 fully grown dragons, adding to her army. Ultimately, Daenerys and Tyrion, who becomes her Hand of the King after crossing the Narrow Sea, ally with Jon Snow. However, during a dangerous mission to the north, one of Daenerys' dragons, Viserion, is felled by the Night King and resurrected as an undead zombie. Unfortunately, Viserion does return for the Battle of Winterfell, but Arya, using her training in Braavos, kills the Night King with Valyrian steel before his armies can fully overtake the humans fighting them. With one vital threat out of the way, Daenerys guns for Cersei, but loses herself in the process. After watching another dragon, Rhaegal, die, as well as her closest friend and confidant, Missandei, Daenerys lays waste to King's Landing while atop her largest and last dragon, Drogon, and though she kills Cersei and Jaime and takes the city, Tyrion and Jon are shocked. Ultimately, Jon kills Daenerys for the good of the realm. Tyrion suggests that Bran become the next ruler and gets a job as Hand of the King in the process, and Jon despondently returns to the far north, concluding this Game of Thrones timeline for now.